Okay, we'll go ahead and get the meeting to order. We do not have a quorum, so we are not able to take any votes, but we can go ahead and start down our agenda. And so I don't have any items from the chairman, but are there any citizens to be heard? If they're not, we're moving on to approval of minutes. And we can't do that. Can we listen to our program reports maybe this morning? Would that be? And then we don't have to vote to receive them until, okay. Okay, well, let's go ahead and start with the program reports. And the first one being the... Staff, wake up. Transit report. Did we catch them
Oh, they're all awake.
The transit report. Kevin.
Mr. Vice Chairman, trustees, thanks for having us. Good morning. I'd like to touch on a few of the items in the January 2015 transit report. They are safety, ridership, on-time performance, and night service. We had 2 preventable accidents in January 2015, 0 in December of 2014, 4 in November, 6 in October, for a rolling 3-month preventable accident rate of 3.3 preventable accidents per month. The good thing is that in the month of January, we had a 40% reduction in preventable accidents from the previous 3-month rolling average. Now, our goal is to have 0 preventable accidents, and we're going to work diligently towards that. Ridership in 2015 January, we had 10,762 riders, 42 riders per day. In January 13, we had 9,203 riders per day for an increase of 12.55% year over year. The primary drivers of that are the enhancements that came about in April, the steadily increasing on-time performance, which is attracting riders, and the introduction of night service, which provides our customers with over 20 hours a day that they didn't previously have. The year-to-date ridership for local and commuter routes in 2015 was approximately 1.8 million, compared to 1.67 million in 2014, for an overall increase of 8.2%. As has been the case lately, the downtown Discovery and the Saturday routes has been fairly static year over year. The cumulative annual total for all services and all types was 1.99 million in 2015, compared to 1.87 million in 2014, for an increase of 6.3%. Our on-time performance for January 15 is a record. It was 94.1%. We're extremely proud of that. On-time performance, increases in on-time performance attract new riders, and we've had steady increases since September 2013, resulting in a 20.6% increase from when we started measuring the new service in April 2014.
Kevin, the on-time performance for January was 74.1%.
Oh, I'm sorry. Did I not say that? I'm sorry.
74.1%.
I'm even more proud.
I thought 90%.
Yeah.
We was really
Sorry about that. Yeah, 74.1.
74.1%.
Thanks, Jason.
Absolutely.
That's very nice of you. Okay, the introduction of night service is just a marvelous thing for our customers. The first night we rode the buses along, we were joined with reporter Ben Felder, and we were regaled with stories that just touch your heart. I got just a few of them. One fellow who works at a restaurant in Bricktown told us that he earned $50 extra that night because he could stay later. I've spoken with him since, and he continues to do that. We encountered a woman on 23rd Street who works at an all-night restaurant. She would go to work at 7 p.m. for her 11 o'clock shift. She now gets to work at 11 o'clock. One other story, not story but truth. There was a lady that worked at a hospital, still works there. Her shift would end at 11 o'clock, and she would stay until 6 in the morning when the first bus came by. She now gets off at 11 and is home before midnight. And I can those are the items I wanted to emphasize. I'll be pleased to provide additional information or answer any questions.
Mr. Chairman, I'd particularly like to compliment the reduction in the accidents. I think that that's a wonderful thing, not only because it has the result of saving us money, obviously, but also keeps our on-time performance going well. Is there a program that's being implemented to reduce those accidents?
Well, we review all accidents. We have quite a training program that goes on. We're about to implement a program where we are going to review the accidents with all of the employees within a week to keep them aware of what has happened. So we are totally, I had safety, by the way, first for a real reason, and that is that we're here to protect the public, ourselves, and of course the dollars. But in my mind, and really in everyone's mind, and that's what our focus is, it's safety first.
Thank you.
I would just add, in addition to that, we have mandatory safety training for all of our bus operators each quarter, and I believe this quarter's safety training start next week.
Monday through Friday.
Great. Thank you.
Thanks a lot.
Good. Thank you, Kevin. Let the record note that Mr. Randall is here and we have a quorum. So would we like to go back to our...
Yes, and would you call the meeting to order?
Okay. Call the meeting to order with a full quorum, or with a quorum. Okay, we'll go back to the agenda as it was provided for the approval of the minutes for the meeting of the Parking Committee on February 5th and the minutes of the Cotpa Board meeting on February 6th.
Move approval.
Second. It's been moved and seconded. All in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed, same sign. Okay, consent docket. Any items for individual consideration? Any of the trustees would like to pull or talk about, or pull and talk about? Okay. It's been moved and seconded. All in approval of approving the consent docket, say aye. Opposed, same sign. Okay, moving on to items for individual consideration. Consideration of approval of the adoption of our debt management policy. And Craig, are you going to speak to this?
Okay.
Sure. Go ahead,
This
Craig.
basically, the council, we brought a debt policy to the city council back in February, and this is a similar policy. There's a couple of changes just to make it specific to the trust. This basically memorializes practices that we've had in place for a long period of time and sets forward some additional standards that we want to make sure that we memorialize and that we follow. It does establish some roles of like a debt manager and a debt coordinator so that we have specific responsibilities assigned to the debt management process. It also sets some basic standards of like debt structure, that you want to ensure that your debt doesn't extend beyond the life of the assets and really preferably shorter than the life of the assets. So it's just setting in place some good practices. One of the other areas that we're really emphasizing right now is compliance. There are standards that generally now with the garage that we did, the Arts District garage, it was actually taxable, so it doesn't apply in this case. But in the event that we do tax-exempt debt, there are certain standards and compliance issues that we have to follow and address for IRS standards. And also SEC is stepping up their enforcement of certain debt requirements on municipal and trust debt. And so that's something that we are setting in place, some more careful standards to ensure that we're following the guidelines and the regulations. We've been doing this, but with the ramped up efforts by both the IRS and the SEC, that we believe it's in our best interest to be more proactive in the way that we're reviewing and enforcing our debt compliance. And so this is just setting in place practices that we've had in the past. Jason works closely with the finance department as we move forward with any kind of trust debt. Right now we've got, we sold the bonds on the garage at $22 million in bonds. We've got about 21.4 outstanding right now. It was a 25-year term on those bonds. We had a AA rating from Moody's and Standard & Poor's. And so for us, it's setting in place good practices that we can ensure that the parts of our financial management that we can control and influence on our, and the influence we can have on our debt, on our bond rating, that we make sure that we get those practices memorialized in a policy.
If I could add to that just a few things, Mr. Chairman. Definitely appreciate the opportunity to work with finance and develop this policy. I think, like Craig said, it just makes good financial sense to memorialize it or formalize it. One thing that I think is going to be very beneficial is the provision for annual reporting. So that's something that we look forward to bringing to the trustees. Again, right now we have one debt issuance outstanding, but there's been times when we've had more than one, and so I think the opportunity to provide an annual report to the trustees is going to be beneficial. And then in addition to that, although the policy applies to our entire department, it really is only pertinent to our parking operations, and I just want to make that clear, obviously, to anybody that's watching, is we don't generally have any debt on the transit side of our operations.
That's good. Is there any other comments? If not, is there a motion to adopt the debt management policy?
Move approval.
All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. Okay. Moving on to item B, consideration of approval to authorize the administrator to negotiate a grant agreement and issue a notice to proceed with a local university for assistance with the Northwest Rapid Transit Corridor feasibility study. Jason.
Mr. Chairman, this is a project that we're excited about. It's kind of the first step in looking at a corridor that was identified back in our 2005 fixed guideway study. This corridor is essentially north on Classen from downtown up to the Northwest Expressway, and then, of course, out to Northwest Oklahoma City. And what this item does here is, as you mentioned, it allows us to be able to negotiate a grant agreement with a local university to help us with what we're calling a feasibility plan. And it's really just kind of that first step at taking a further look at this corridor that was recommended. And as we're aware, ACOG has been working and looking at some of the corridors in that fixed guideway study much more closely, and so this is kind of our opportunity also to partner with ACOG, partner with city planning, but look at this corridor out on the Northwest Expressway. And so what we would expect is through this feasibility study is really to have this university do some public meetings for us, help us kind of identify some potential stop locations, look at the different modes that could serve this corridor. BRT is kind of the one that we are looking at more heavily than others, but we'll have the university evaluate all of them. And then in conjunction with that, and as part of this project, we're going to be incorporating the DOT Healthy Planning Corridor Framework that we were approved as one of the beta tests for this new DOT program. And so again, working with the university and Cotpa staff to kind of fold in that feasibility plan, and then also what makes a healthy transit corridor. Is it connections to hospitals and grocery stores? Is it connectivity, people able to walk on sidewalks, bike trails to be able to connect to the transit? So we're excited about the project. I know that's a lot to get into, but this is really kind of the highlight of our long-range plan as well. So I wanted to, our long-range plan report. So I wanted to spend a little bit of time talking about it and giving you a little bit of background. So again, we're looking forward to working with the university to help us kick off this study. It is just the very first step in what could be a significantly longer process to fully evaluate the corridor.
Are there any questions?
Have we chosen a university to work with us, or are those 4 universities still on the table?
We actually received one grant proposal from the Institute of Quality Communities from the University of Oklahoma. So that's the one that we'll be looking at and negotiating with.
Okay, is there a motion to authorize the administrator to negotiate the grant agreement and issue a notice to proceed? It's been moved and seconded. All in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed? Same sign. Okay, moving on to item number C, Consideration of approval of change order number 1 and number 2 to the contract with Downey Contracting LLC for steel beam coating project for the Century Center parking garage.
This item, change orders 1 and 2, are, again, for that steel beam coating project at the Century Center. The total of change orders number 1 and 2, $961.70. The first change order is simply an additional allowance for the striping for the garage. We had $8,000 originally. The striping actually cost $8,360. And then the second change order here is $601.70, and that was to clean the drains for the garage to remove all of the construction debris. So again, the total change order 1 and 2, $961.70, represents a 0.3% increase over the original contract amount.
Forgive me, but why are we paying them to remove their debris?
Well, good question. I mean, I think it's part of the, it's part of the construction project. Lots of debris, I guess, entered the drains that was not anticipated, and so in order to wrap the project up, make it functional, and open the garage, we accepted the change order to clean the drains.
Shouldn't they have used due diligence to make sure that the drains didn't get clogged to begin with, and shouldn't they bear the brunt of the cost of removing that debris since they are responsible for it being there in the first place?
Yes, Robbie Williams with Triad Design Group. We've actually had 3 different contractors working in there. The private company, we had one before, and now we have Downey in there. So it's not, we don't believe that the current contractor that's asking for the $600 clogged the drains. It's just the drains were clogged, and it was better for them to do it. So it just
could we not have a meeting of the minds with those 3 contractors so that they decide how to split the cost of that, and then they pay it rather than the citizens of the city paying it?
Well, we don't know exactly for sure if it's construction debris or if the drains have just been clogged through time. So that's why the change order was done. If it's the wish of the board, we can go back to the contractor and sort this out a little bit more.
The idea of the citizens paying for something that the contractor ought to be paying for. We pay the contractor a decent amount of money to do a decent job for us, and we should expect at the end of the day that that job be done in a certain kind of way with a certain kind of quality. and good money deserves a good kind of job be done for us. But whatever you guys want.
Could the drains have been clogged by just normal wear and tear over the life of the garage?
They could have been.
But they were, as far as you know, they were working at the...
Until the last year when everybody got in there and started doing the repairs, I have no idea when the last time was the drains were cleaned.
We can.
My struggle with it, I mean, I don't disagree with Varan. My struggle is I don't know how we're going to determine whose debris it is and who's responsible for it. And we'll spend more money trying to figure out at this point where the debris came from rather than just clearing it and taking care of it. So I don't disagree in principle. My concern is how do we get to that point?
I mean, the price was very, very, very reasonable. We just asked, that we could get it taken care of. So it wasn't like they were asking for an unreasonable amount of money to clean the drains.
And I also feel compelled to say that this is not citizens' money or tax dollars. This is parking system revenue, which is ratepayers. So I just want to clarify that.
And those ratepayers are citizens.
Well, in many cases they are, but...
Revenue streams, and this entity has been relatively
Do it about developing revenue streams and becoming a standalone in an environment where we have never been a standalone before. And we pay those guys good money to take good care of us. And if we've paid them a decent salary to do a decent job, then we should expect that a decent job be done, whether it's 1 cent or 1,101 cents. Again, whatever you guys want to do works for me, but it just seems to me that if contractors have allowed those drains to get clogged, which weren't clogged previous to now, then contractors ought to be taking care of the cleaning of those drains.
Any other discussion? Is there a motion to go ahead and recommend the approval of change orders 1 and 2?
I'll move approval.
Second.
Okay, it's been moved and seconded. Is there any more discussion? If not? Huh? Okay. Okay, all in favor say aye. Aye. All opposed? Okay, it passes.
All right, thank you.
Item number D is consideration of approval of change order number 3 for the contract with Oakley's Incorporated for MB 1143 landscaping improvements at Union Station. Jason?
Project MB 1143, again, is the landscaping improvements that are currently being performed at Union Station. Oakley's, our contractor, has submitted essentially change order number 3 here, which allows $3,000 for the installation of irrigation sleeves. Irrigation sleeves allow the sprinkler system, obviously, to be ran under concrete. The other item on this change order is $1,350 for the removal and replacement of approximately 3 inches or so of some of the topsoil in the planting beds. And so when you combine both of those items, change order number 3 is an additional $4,350. The one thing I would mention is, if you'll recall, change order number 1 on this contract was actually a deduct of $10,200. Change order number 2 was a no-cost change order. So even with this increase of $4,350, we're still about $5,800 under that original contract amount. So with that, I'll be happy to answer any other questions.
I have a question, Mr. Chairman. Are we going to do something to change the type of de-icing material that we use so that we won't be continually replacing this topsoil?
Yeah, in fact, the Oakley's is going to be giving us a recommendation on that. We've asked for a recommendation and instructions on proper ice treatment around these planting beds so that we can get the right, correct chemicals.
We're running chemicals through the lines for the winter, correct? We're not, I know that in most home systems, they suggest that you drain that system at the beginning of the cold weather so that you don't have to deal with any kind of deterioration relative to the chemicals that you put in those pipes or because of the freezing of those pipes. Is there a way that we can institute some sort of regiment that allows us to do that so that we're taking better care of that equipment?
Yeah, I think what the process will be for that is again, as far as like protecting the sprinkler system itself and the freezing temperatures, we will follow whatever recommendation our landscaper provides us for that system. And then we anticipate having to bid that landscaping, the maintenance of that new landscaping, and that would be part of the scope, is whatever contractor is responsible for the landscaping. Hopefully, we can get them to also take care of the sprinkler system. If not, we'll have a separate contract for somebody to maintain the sprinkler system. But rightfully so, those sprinkler systems are pretty intricate, and you need to make sure you're doing the regular annual seasonal maintenance, and we'll make sure that's done.
But this damage that's referenced in the memo appears to me to be salt that we sprinkled on the sidewalks, not something that ran through the system. That's apparently what we were using. But that's what my question was. Shouldn't we be using something that's safer for the plants?
Yeah, and really, prior to this landscaping project, it wasn't much of an issue. I mean, we had, just regular, grass around most of Union Station, and we've used salt for parking lots and walkways in the past, and, But we will be looking at other options. I think calcium chloride was one that was potentially shared with us. And again, we're going to be going off what the landscaper hands us in terms of this is what we recommend you treat your sidewalks with in order to protect your plantings.
Okay, is there any other discussion? If not, is there a motion to approve the change order number 3?
Move. Second.
It's been moved and seconded. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Okay. Moving on to item number E, consideration of adoption of a resolution declaring an emergency, ratifying, waiving formal competitive bidding procedures, awarding construction contract to Restech Incorporated for new waterproofing membrane to the Sheridan Walker parking garage, and ratifying issuance of an emergency work order and approving contracts and bonds. Jason?
Restech, Inc. is the contractor that's currently performing the repairs at Sheridan Walker. As you'll recall, we have been managing a project over there to repair some of the concrete spalling. We've been doing some rehabilitation in the staircases. We've been doing some waterproofing on some of the lower levels. And when we bid that project originally, we had an alternate for waterproofing the very top floor of that garage. When we evaluated the bids at that time, we decided, we were going to hold off on accepting that alternate and possibly delaying that additional waterproofing on the top floor. During the course of the work and working with Triad and Restech, we happened to see, we got a better understanding of the degree of the need for waterproofing on that top story when the crews were in there working, and we happened to have some rains at the same time. And so what we have determined is that we certainly do need to push up the time frame on waterproofing the top floor of that parking garage. And essentially we are using Restech, who's also submitted a bid for that waterproofing, to go ahead and perform those repairs. They were already assembled and on site, and like I said, we'd already took it through the competitive bidding process one time.
I do have a question here. Do we or do we not, as a course of common business practice, require that concrete that is poured for us be sealed and waterproofed in all of our garages, since that is an issue here in Oklahoma, because we do use salt on the streets, because we do use corrosives out there, and those things get dragged onto the surfaces that we have. I know that in a lot of places now, when they pour that concrete, the last two things that they do is seal it and make sure that it's waterproofed so that you don't have any kind of ongoing problems as the course of time kind of sets in on you.
Yes, sir. On the top floor, we had a few areas where we were replacing just portions of the deck.
I remember we had a conversation about that when you guys were drilling the holes and filling those things.
This was to go and coat the entire top floor. And as he had mentioned, we had bid that as an alternate, and it was not accepted. But when we got up there and started doing repairs and found that we had some post-tensioning cables that were corroding and all that, we believe it's in the best interest to go ahead and coat the entire top deck, recoat it.
And we're only going to coat the top deck. We're not going to deal with any kind of waterproofing in the ancillary decks as we go down through that thing, eh?
Well, we have done that in the areas that we have repaired, but the garage drains fairly well, and the majority of it from White Engineering, who's our consultant, they recommended the coating on the top deck.
Was the reason why we didn't accept the original alternate was because you felt like it wasn't needed, or was the
Well, no, when White Engineering did their inspection of the garage, they did believe that, if we got good prices and all that, we should go ahead and do it at this time, and then the decision was made not to do it. And then we got up there and the contractor started cutting out the deck and chipping and making the repairs, and we saw the corrosion, and we believe we need to go ahead and just coat the entire top deck while we're there.
And I would say the decision wasn't so much not to do it, it's just that at the time, and as you are aware, we've had so many projects going on with our parking garages, we felt it was more appropriate to delay it at that time. It was something we would certainly revisit. We were looking at potentially, rebidding in the future. But again, after, and I saw some photos myself of where you could just see the moisture seeping into the concrete. It was pretty obvious that, we don't want to delay this. We want to go ahead and get it done now.
I guess the answer to my question then is that we are not sealing that concrete and or waterproofing it as we complete the construction on those entities. And I guess the next question would be...
No, you are doing that on your new garages and the areas that we repair. We do seal it, but over time that does wear away and it has to be resealed.
That was my question. So how old is the Sheridan Walker garage?
25 years old.
I mean, at least 25, right?
7?
It's gotta be older than
I
that,
think it was
older than that.
built in the early 80s.
But, so would this have been done originally and it's just worn off, or
That's correct.
wasn't done at all?
That's correct.
It was done originally and
To the best of our knowledge, we believe it was done originally. I mean, that's just
Standard
good practice. Yes,
I would
sir.
guess here that none of us here know for sure that it was absolutely done in the 80s. That would not have been something that was done in the 80s as a course of just building the thing, that the need to seal those concrete entities is something that has arisen. We recognize it in the last 20 years that that's something that needs to be done to concrete, that because it is a porous kind of a thing that it has to be sealed. And my question again is, have we done that with our new entities so that they're sealed and waterproofed so that we don't have to, 20 years from now, whoever's here have this conversation about repairing them and trying to stop any kind of
So on the new garage, we did, right?
Right. We have whatever waterproofing is required, recommended. I think we also did some waterproofing when we did the Century Center repairs. I'll have to double check on that. And in addition to this waterproofing, like Robbie said, is we part of this project included waterproofing anyway for some of the repair areas.
That's
in fact, we had the entrances shut down on both Walker and Sheridan at different times, performing that waterproofing. So,
What's the normal lifespan for waterproofing? I mean, it seems like that's like putting a roof on your house. You can expect it every 20 to 25 years.
Right, and it's based
Or in
on use,
Oklahoma,
but
every
somewhere,
6.
I would have to look at the submittal, but usually that's 10 to 15 years.
When we rehab the Santa Fe garage, we put a coating on it. Is this the same type of material?
Yes, sir.
Well, it's lasting forever up there because we wanted to restripe all of the layers of the Santa Fe, levels of the Santa Fe. We couldn't do the top level because we had just put this new coating on it. And so I felt like, well, we'll do it in a few years. Well, it's lasting
The
forever.
end is near. We've done Santa Fe, we've done Century, and now we're doing Sheridan Walker. I think we've about got all the work done on the garages that need to be done.
Okay. Any other questions or comments? Move approval, adopt the resolution? Okay.
All right, thank you.
It's been moved and seconded. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Okay. Is there a motion to move item F and G to the heel of the docket to enter into executive session and then come back and consider the motion G after that?
So moved.
Okay. It's been moved and seconded, and we take an individual roll call. So, Varian, we'll start with you.
Could I get some context first, please?
Item F is an executive session, which we normally move to the heel of the docket.
We're going to talk about the contract with the union?
Yes, that's in the item F, is to enter into executive session with the municipal council to discuss labor negotiations in accordance with the Oklahoma statute.
You bet. Let's do that.
Okay?
Yes.
Yes. Okay. It is unanimously agreed to move to the heel of the docket, so we'll go on to Item number 7A, which is ratification of payroll and vendor claims. Is there any discussion here? Or?
Move approval.
Second.
It's been moved and seconded. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, the same sign. Okay, and now we're into the financial reports. First of all, there is a Cotpa schedules for revenue and expenditure budget to actual for the 7 months ending January 31st. Jason.
Okay, I think I'd like to begin with talking about the Transportation Division financial report on page 2. And we'll start by looking at our operating revenues. Our revenues derived from passengers, which is ticket sales, fare boxes, continues to be over target. We're at about 103.7% of what we had projected, or about $59,000 over our target. The federal grant revenue that you see, I want to talk about that quickly. We are showing $430,000 under what we had expected to draw when we developed our budget at this point in the year. And we actually did that intentionally. We have an older grant that we are trying to close out, and in that grant we actually overdrew some of our paratransit funds. And so again, trying to take the most conservative approach that we could, we decided we would hold off on drawing any type of maintenance reimbursement for our paratransit operations in case we had to use that to offset this older grant that had shown an overdraw. We've been able to work that out in terms of the older grant. We can do a budget revision, and we will be able to draw this funding. But again, just to let the trustees know that we intentionally held off on drawing this paratransit reimbursement until we could get things settled out with that older grant. Now, the one thing I would also mention here, though, is because of some of the savings that we're seeing in salaries to this point, and again, that will change with the potential approval of a new labor agreement. But then also, when you look at our supply budget, you'll notice we're under budget on our supplies. About $230,000 of that is due to savings in fuel. So what I'm really trying to get at here is it looks like we have enough savings, at least between those two categories, that if it holds out through the rest of the year, we may not need to actually put this paratransit draw into our operating budget. Instead, we could put it into our capital fund and essentially use it to help us replace buses. So again, I would expect in the coming months we will probably still see a negative amount on this federal grant draw, knowing that we haven't missed drawing the money. It's not been added back to our operating budget. It's been put in our capital reserves. And so we'll monitor that from month to month and make sure that our expenditures still stay in line with where we think they're going to be. But if we can increase that capital reserve, we would recommend doing that.
Does any of that mechanism affect service?
No. Okay, on the parking financial report, page 3, a couple things to talk about here. On the parking revenues, I wanted to point out that through January 31st, you'll notice a variance of $615,000 under what we had targeted, under what we had estimated for our budget, or about 86% of our budgeted revenues have been received through January 31st. This is up from last month. If you recall last month's report, we were at about $200,000 under our projection. And I want to take a minute to kind of explain where those numbers come from. About $300,000 of that variance is due to the timing of basically a payment received from one customer. And when we were building our budget, we estimated receiving that payment in January. It's likely we're going to get that. Well, we actually, I think, received that payment in February. It'll just be a question of whether it's booked if it's booked to February already. So that makes up about $300,000 of that variance. So the remaining $300,000 is directly attributable to the fact that we opened the Arts District garage late, and when we built our budget, we had expected the Arts District garage to be open all year. And then another $100,000 of that variance is due to opening the Century Center garage later than expected. Again, when we built our budget, we had planned on opening the Century Center in January. We actually opened it up in March. So that is affecting, our ability to meet our budgeted revenues. At the same time, when you look at our total excess of revenues over expenditures, even after our debt service on the new garage, we are basically $1,070,000 to the good. So our revenues, even after debt service, continue to exceed our expenses by $1 million so far through 7 months of the year. And we're actually still, even with the delays of the garages being opened, we're still adding to that excess. Last month, we were looking at about $970,000 in excess. Now we're at $1,070,000. So we continue to, again, revenues continue to outpace expenses.
Okay. When we built that budget, did we not soften those numbers in expectation that the garage would not open on time, so that we kind of had an idea that where we would be if it hadn't?
No, I mean, when we proposed the budget and we were looking at our revenues back in the, March timeframe, I mean, at that time, we had still expected the Arts District garage to be open for the full fiscal year. So, no, we didn't soften them or back them off at all, because at that time, we fully expected it to be open. Now, in the Century Center, we did. We actually backed out 6 months of revenue, thinking we're going to, not be able to open until January. We're opening in March. Okay, and then the River Financial on page 4. A couple things to talk about there. On the operating revenues, again, you'll notice that the revenues are under budget. And this is, as I mentioned last month, because we actually ended up shutting service down a little bit sooner than what we had planned. And we did that because those November and December are historically, low months for us in terms of ridership. And yet we have a certain level of expenses that come with that, regardless of how many passengers we have, right? So, again, in the interest of trying to maintain our expenditure budget, we reduced service in November and December. That impacted our revenues, and that's why we're under budget. Now, looking at our operating expenditures, we're still showing to be about 2.3% over budget on our operating expenditures. We are currently working with HMS to reconcile year-end expenditures for the contract year that ended December 31st, 2014. And again, we're working to reconcile those, but we would expect additional expenditures to probably hit this budget before the year is up. So we'll have a better update and idea of what those are next month.
Okay. Are there any other questions about the actual to budget financials? If not, do we want to consider the interim financial statement on the pension and then vote on receiving both of them? Is there any comments on that, Jason?
Just to mention, probably share our funding ratio with you, and you can find that on the first page of the report. But essentially, the funding ratio is 73.1%. You can see from the notes in the report there that that's up from 69.2 the previous year. So we continue to gain some ground on our funding ratio. And then as far as participants go, I believe we now have 62 participants in the Cotpa pension plan, and I will find what page you can find that on. It's going to be on page 10 of your report. You can look and see how the participation has changed from this year to the previous year. And again, we have 62 participants now in the pension compared to 56 the previous year.
Any questions on the pension financial interim 6-month statement? If not, is there a motion to receive both of our financial reports?
Move the item.
It's been moved and seconded. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. Okay, moving back to our program reports. We had our transit report earlier, and our long-range plan, Larry's not here, and we covered part of that with the item on the school grant, the local university agreement.
The corridor study was,
Yes.
certainly the highlight, I think, of the long-range plan.
So we have a written report there. Does anybody have any questions on that? If not, we'll move on to the parking system report. And I understand Debbie is ill today, and Jason's going to lead us through that.
Debbie is ill, so I'm going to wish her the best and try to fill in for her here.
Sounds like the transit system needs and Cotpa needs a wellness program.
Okay, that's right. Okay, so looking at the report that's in your packet, you'll notice that our occupancy rates are very comparable to what we've talked about over the last few months. We're at about 104% on our occupancy. What I really wanted to do was spend a little bit of time talking about the status of the Arts District Garage. And essentially where we're at now with the Arts District Garage, we have 622 paid parkers. Keep in mind the garage itself is about 802 spaces. We have 268 people on the, or 268 parkers on the waiting list. We have made contact with about 200 of those, and it's basically given them the notice that we're going to put them in the garage. So hopefully by April, we'll start getting some of those folks moved in there. So again, with the 622 and then another 200, we're essentially going to be, looking at filling that up. It is taking a little bit longer, even though we have 622 paid parkers, it is taking a little bit longer to, for whatever reason, move the people over to the garage. But I would expect it to begin certainly filling up very soon. On the Century Center garage, I did want to mention that we opened the garage in March. We're no longer providing the shuttle service. So we're certainly glad to get the Century Center opened back up. And then we've talked a little bit about the Sheridan Walker, and that is that ResTech is finishing up the kind of the initial scope of the project. We're hoping to be able to bring final acceptance for that initial project to the board in April, and then they'll begin the waterproofing that we discussed this morning. So with that, I'll be glad to answer any questions on the parking report.
I know that you guys are moving as fast as you can to fill the Arts District garage, but is there a way that we can expedite that process so that we get that thing filled a little bit faster, considering the development of parking all around us here? That revenue stream helps us out a lot, and it would be, I think, a little better if we could solidify that thing as quickly as we possibly could, rather than allowing another 30, 60, 120 days to get those folks in there. Is there a way that we can shift some personnel from other areas so that we might be able to expedite the process?
Well, I think really we have taken the measures now to expedite that process. We have been purposely moving a little bit slow on committing those spaces with not having the Century Center open and not sure how many people that were in the Century Center at one time. We're definitely going to come back. One of our kind of assurances to the people that were displaced with the Century Center was that if they, continued to pay their parking, we would make sure they had a place to go back to. So we have been, purposely a little bit slow, knowing that we had the Century Center that we may need some capacity for. We also were thinking about trying to relocate some of the parkers from Santa Fe to the Arts District garage for those that made sense. So we were kind of leaving a little bit of a cushion there in case we had to do some moving around. But again, I think now we have took those measures to expedite filling that by saying, okay, We've got 622 parkers. Now let's go get 200 more and tell them they can start parking in the garage. So.
Okay, any other questions on parking? If not, Michael, can you give us a marketing, customer relations, and technology report?
Good morning. I wanted to take a moment just to show you a few of the materials that we are going to see popping up around our night service districts. We have several pieces of media that will be coming out. While that's pulling up, we'll be also at the March 22nd, which will be just a few weeks away on a Sunday at the Open Streets event. We hope that many of you will be able to come out and visit with us and also visit with all the people that will be coming in. Again, that was a very popular destination last year and saw, they think, upwards of 20,000 people. We will also have our Spokies presence there, and we encourage you to also be sure and find them and locate them. It's a very long span, so bring your walking shoes. It's a great event, and we hope that we have great weather.
This is along 23rd Street?
Yes, sir. And then we also have, on March 18th, we have our national, we'll be participating in the National Bus Operator Appreciation Day. So if you have an opportunity to say thanks to those men and women, we certainly encourage you to do that, and we certainly encourage our riders to do that. So right here we have, on the next slide, we have something that we're pretty interested in seeing how the result will be. The door hanger will be distributed to homes and businesses around each route. We expect to have a little over 16,000 distributed. This is something we did a few years ago when we extended routes, or not extended, but added frequency to routes 40 and 8. That was one of the first enhancements we did a few years ago. And we did that as a direct mail, and we saw a really good boost and response in ridership in regards to just making sure they were aware of the service in their neighborhood. It's two-sided, has English on one side and Spanish on the other. And our next slide, what we have are we have a variety of posters. This one here just shows a bilingual version, but this one will be displayed at in storefronts at OCCC, where we're partnering to provide the Link Stop Now. They've been very receptive and very excited about that. Businesses along the Southwest 29th Street Business District, Uptown, Windsor, so many of those are very excited to receive these so that they can help promote that there's night service there. And we're also working with them on somewhat of a destination map that creates, it shows our night service, but then it also will show on the back businesses that are open, and it will show their hours of operation so that they can help promote and show from a district level what's available using the services. And
Michael,
again, these will
is there a
also be
social media aspect to that campaign?
most definitely.
What is the level of our followers at this point? Can you tell me?
On Facebook and Twitter both, we have a little over 2,000 followers and, on both of those. We see that to continue to grow as we expand services and make it more relevant to various audiences.
Can you tell me what the exponential is on that growth?
The exponential.
How fast the growth? What is the level at which it grows over a 10, 15, 20, 30-day period?
It's not very big. It's not very big unless we just invest in each of those social medias to say, hey, like our page. It really depends on the engagement that occurs, where we see the biggest amount of, or the largest increase is when other people, if you have a Twitter account or a Facebook account, if you like it and share it, anything that you can do, and that's as all of us can do to promote those posts will increase that engagement and increase the likelihood that people will like and follow us on those various social medias.
I'll just offer this. There are vendors out there who offer pools of those media groups for your access. It is at a price, but they offer you more followers so that you have a bigger pool of folks to make that contact with. And we're in a marketplace of over 1 million people. That gives us an enormous group of folks that we could socially contact with.
Certainly. And the models on how social media works today, and I'd be happy to discuss this with you another time also, it doesn't work like it used to. And the type of engagement that you have has gone to much more of a business model where you do have to pay for your post to be seen in front of others as well. Those are all things, we actually use a vendor now to help us with that, but the thing that we want to make sure that we do, because many have done this before us and we're trying to learn off of their best practices, is that the more organic that the people who like and follow you are, the more engagement you will have, because you may pay to have them like you or follow you, but as soon as they do, they'll undo it when they don't want to get your information. So it's really about providing good content and making sure that we have kind of an active base of individuals sharing that information.
Exactly. You have to remain attractive.
Right.
In order to keep them following. And that's, I guess, part of the challenge for this entity is that we are attractive in the marketplace right now, and we ought to be taking advantage of that nature. There are folks out there who we are getting ridership growth like we've never had before. And again, like I said, there are reputable entities out there who can offer you those followers and guarantee that those followers stick with you through a 20 or 30-day period, which gives you enough time to show yourself to be attractive to them.
Right. On the next slide, what we have is just an example of the billboards. There are 4. There are 2 along each route. One is a digital on Route 11, so that's a little different, and it'll have a little different look to it. And then on the next slide, we have just a radio spot. If you'll just click the play with this, there you go.
Whether you're working late or enjoying the night out, Embark's night bus service gets you there. 2 crosstown bus routes now operate Monday through Friday until midnight. Embark Crosstown, routes 11 and 23N, get you farther by connecting you with exciting night destinations. So whatever your destination, work, school, errands, or entertainment, Embark bus service will get you there. Connect and map your route at embarkok.com or call 235-RIDE.
So that's just one of the examples of the radio spots. These, again, are all primarily geared to our existing ridership. We want to make sure that we take advantage of making sure that they're aware of the service, they are comfortable using it already, and making sure that they know what is available to them as additional options in the evening time. And then on the page right below, or the spot right below that, is our digital advertising. We have quite a bit of that going on. The uniqueness about this is that it's all done by geofencing based on your mobile device. So if you operate frequently within that geofence, which is around each route, then it will capture your IP, and it'll serve you, whenever you go to the web, it'll serve you advertising based on your IP address. So we want to make sure that we are capturing people who are in the service areas in which we have operating. I believe that's it on that, and I'd be happy to answer any additional questions you might have. There is a heavy social media component. We had planned to launch that a little earlier, but there was some sickness at our firm, so that set them back, and then we're going to meet this week, and then weather. So I should be able to show that to you next time if you haven't seen it already.
Quick question about the radio. I noticed KTUZ, KVSP, and KGOU, those are niche markets. We have more than just that one presentation, correct? So that we are pointedly reaching each of those niche markets out there. Each of those radio stations has a significant group that follow it, and those groups are different in terms of lots of different qualifiers. Are we pointing our advertising at each of those different niches?
Yeah, that's just one example of the radio spot. It is geared specifically to each of those audiences. We have the very first one there, the 106.7. That is a Hispanic station. What we did is we used information from Scarborough, from various media research firms that tell us what the best reach is and the most bang for buck that we'll get for the buy that we have. And so we also compared that to our ridership and looked at how in the past when we've researched where they get information, what places they get it from. And that's all aligned with what you see up there.
I think the question would be, how do we reach the people that are not our ridership to get them to be riders?
Right.
And so are we working on some identifiers for that?
Yes, we have another campaign that we are working on. Again, when we're talking about very different audiences here.
Right.
And so in the beginning, what we wanted to make sure we did is garner as much ridership as possible. And the first opportunity that we saw was our existing ridership and making sure that they used the night services first. And so we wanted to focus on that first. And with this daylight savings time ending this weekend, we also feel like that's going to also just, again, boost ridership because it's going to be longer days, more opportunity there for those who are comfortable. We have photo shoots coming up now just to target in those other audiences that we don't currently have using the services at night. And we have partnerships and relationships and how we're sharing our media and on a social media level as well. The awareness to those audiences, those are all being developed and being, I would say that we'll see that probably May or June to target those audiences.
Any other questions? I do have one. You have in your report an invitation for bids for advertising for onboard wireless internet for public access. Can you update us on that?
Right. We've received quite a bit of interest so far in that bid solicitation. What we hope to do is we'll have phases of installation of these buses with Wi-Fi service, and we hope to have that in place by May. What we understand is it's a relatively easy installation, but we just wanted to make sure we were getting the best plan.
It's to buy equipment for each bus?
It's the plan, and it's also a service agreement for the cellular service that will be provided for the access to Wi-Fi.
I believe our capital plan that was approved by the trustees included, 10? Was it 10 buses?
Right.
That we would equip with Wi-Fi this fiscal year. So that's our minimum goal, is to get 10.
And
we don't have any online right now?
We have 4.
Okay. That are based on the original contract that we did 3 or 4 years ago that has kind of been ongoing?
No, this is operating off of the city's cellular plan that they use for city phones and various. But that gave us the opportunity to pilot and to learn a little bit before we ask for what type of equipment, because there is a specific need. And we also had the opportunity to meet with several of them when we went to the APTA Expo last fall to determine what were the best needs, what were the problems that agencies encountered. Especially with the large service area that we have, we wanted to make sure that we were able to maintain a cellular connection. And so that also created some unique opportunities to look for places that can guarantee that connection. We also wanted to make sure that we had some controls in place in which we could control what kind of content was viewed on buses to make sure that there wasn't anything inappropriate. But we also wanted to lay the foundation for equipment that would allow us to possibly generate ad revenue based on screen flashes that could come up before you launch, much like you would see at an airport or something of that nature. And that takes all very unique equipment.
That last statement takes me to my question. We're talking about just the hardware for Wi-Fi access on buses now at this point. That's what the bid is for, correct?
The bid is for both the hardware and for the service itself.
Okay. Given that most of those providers out there, cell service providers, are upgrading in this marketplace, who is going to be doing the drop-in? Who's going to be providing the ads for us? Will we be doing that in-house? And will we be filtering out a lot of those other folks who don't have an economic stake in what's being accessed in our Wi-Fi?
Yeah, any ads that are sold as part of a screen that pops up that advertises before you can actually log on and use the web would be something that we would have within our control.
We'll do that in-house.
Our oversight, yes. But now, if you went to a website, after you get in and you go to a website and it serves up an ad, we don't have any control over that. That's just browsing the internet.
Will we have the ability to tag our info or our information to those accesses so that when those folks go to a website, they have to see something about us as they get there or while they're there at some point?
Right, just in the very beginning, we'll have, when you first open up your device, you're on the bus, and you say, I want to connect to the Wi-Fi, a screen will pop up, you'll have to agree to our terms of service, and then we have the opportunity to provide another screen that says, learn more about this, or, any type of ad we want to do. It'll be a full screen display. But once you move past that, and let's say you are looking at what movie times are coming up, what shows up around your search is all dictated by the browser that you use and those who have paid for advertising there.
And we'll have the ability to watch the fluctuation, those folks who are being accessed the most often, so that we might be able to add our message along to those kinds of contacts?
If we pay to have our message added to that. Once you pass through the I agree, and you pass through our first front page of our ad, what's out there is controlled by the internet itself and the various vendors. It's not something that we can control every ad that is displayed. And that your question about what we can see is one of the main reasons why we why we needed to go to a different vendor than what a city provides here, is because we needed much deeper and richer reporting functions because of the explicit nature of what we're trying to do and what we're trying to accomplish, and that's to learn more about them. What the city currently has on contract now isn't built or designed to do what we're wanting to do.
Okay. Thank you, Michael. I guess we'll move on to the Oklahoma River cruises. Jeannie?
Good morning. Just to highlight a couple of things in the report, we have once again made some revisions to our schedule. If you've been out to the Meridian Landing area, you'll see the hotels are in full swing for those that were built last year and are up and operating, and then the new ones that are coming in, including some extended stay hotels. So with our new schedule, we've pared back on some of our specialty cruises, and we've extended our service to Meridian Landing to later in the evening. Previously, 5 o'clock was your last opportunity to get back there. This year, it'll be as late as 9 o'clock. You'll be able to stay in the Bricktown Entertainment District or downtown or Boathouse District a bit longer. It gives you a full 8-hour stretch in there from when you can come into that area and then get back to Meridian. And we are in contact with the hotels at Meridian to ensure that they're continuing to promote our service. And also new this year is our gift card. We went through the Square program. The Square is the the swiping tool for iPads that we use on the boats, to offer a gift card. We get a lot of requests for gift certificates, particularly around Christmas time. We get people who want to buy certificates. We're having to issue a paper certificate and then manually track the use of that certificate. With a gift card, all of this will be taken care of for us by the Square service. And with that, and one other thing, this is our 8th season, and it is the 8th season. We will have Oklahoma History Center provide us with historical reenactors on Saturdays, and we're very excited that they've decided to continue this program with us. And with that, I'll be happy to answer some questions.
Any questions? If not, thank you very much. Let's go ahead, and is there a motion to receive our program report? It's been moved and seconded. All in favor say aye. Opposed? Okay, we're moving into executive session. back to considering the individual item G on our agenda, considering approval of amendments to the negotiated labor agreement between Central Oklahoma Transportation and Parking Authority and the amalgamated transit local. Jason, is there any discussion or is there any explanation other than what's in the report, what we talked about in the executive session?
Nothing to add.
Any questions from the trustee? If not, is there a motion to approve the amendment to the agreement?
So moved.
Second. Been moved and seconded. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
All opposed?